Hello there and welcome to today's video. In today's video we are going to be dealing with rust, or rather the prevention thereof. Today's vehicle that we're going to be working on is my 2014 Vauxhall Zafira 2-litre CDTI SE 165. In other words, a Vauxhall Zafira 2-litre CDTI SE. Also known as the Zafira Tourer, or in GM parlance, the Zafira C. Now, the Zafira C is quite a different vehicle from the Zafira B and the Zafira A, in that it is based on it is still based on the Astra Delta 2 platform, I believe, but the Delta 2 has grown in size and actually has a front end setup that's very similar to the Vauxhall Insignia. Now, what I wanted to do, because there has been some evidence of subframe problems on older Zafiras, was to actually get the undertray off of the vehicle and give that a good going over with some rustproofing fluid. So today's fluid that we're using is a mixture of wax oil and Tetraseal. What I've done is I've used my high pressure wax oil application tool to apply this, and to get that ready I've actually had the Tetraseal sat in some hot water and also sat out in the sun, and I've put the pipe work from the wax oil thing into a bucket of hot water just to get rid of any old wax oil, and then just use pressure to get it out. First thing to do is to get the vehicle jacked up, and the vehicle has got 4 jacking points, which I've just noted there. It's got the indentation. It also got that large box section there, which you can then support the vehicle on once you've got it jacked up. So I was going to try and use that bit of wood to brace between the jacking point and the jack, but there wasn't actually enough space. So I put the jack onto a flat board, as you can see here. Got the jack to meet the jacking point, and then just jack the vehicle up. You actually get a good shot here of the sill section. You can actually see there are a number of rubber bungs along the sill, and in a later video I will actually be removing those and injecting some rustproofing fluid into there. Today's job was mainly just to attack the subframe, which is a bit of a rot hotspot on older Zafiras, and also just to have a go at the floor pan area and some of the flat surfaces, which is where the big sort of wax oil gun comes into its own, actually sort of being able to cover a large area in a relatively short period of time. You can actually see quite nicely here that there are a number of box sections which have got holes in them, and those holes I actually used a little later on in the video and basically filled up with lots of wax oil / Tetraseal to make sure that they don't rust. The underside of the vehicle, it's a 4-year-old, will be 5 years old in 2019, 5-year-old vehicle. Actually not too bad at all, but I do tend to keep my cars clean and look after them, and it's had limited use over the past few years, so it hasn't been exposed too much to salty areas. The belly plate that you can see here covers the whole underside, almost sort of the whole underside of the front subframe, and it's there primarily for aerodynamics rather than any sort of protection. It's held in by a series of 8mm bolts, which I'm just going through and systematically undoing. And you can actually see there is a central part of the belly plate which is held on by a couple of Phillips screws, which you can actually lower and remove if you want to do a oil service on the vehicle, so that you don't actually have to remove that whole belly plate. It is actually a good idea to remove said belly plate for a reason which I'll show you in a minute, and to actually do that once a year and just keep the rustproofing topped up in the general area. Make sure that you've got plenty of rags on close standby, you've got some white spirit on standby, and you're wearing clothes that you don't mind getting ruined. I mean, I'm actually wearing a pair of jeans and a shirt here which are just covered in stains and are absolutely no good and destined for the bin anyway. But you do get absolutely covered in the stuff. It's quite a dirty job, but it's quite satisfying knowing that you've rustproofed your vehicle. On the inner wing area, where the belly plate joins the inner wing guard, you've got a selection of little plastic tabs that you just need to pop out. Flat blade screwdriver will do that. And then you just pop out the other part of the tab, and that actually gives you access and the ability to fully drop down the belly plate. It's not that heavy, and you can actually sort of just rest it on your chest when it sort of comes down. Not that heavy at all, and just basically, as you can see here, just slides out from under the vehicle once I've got it out. So just coming out from under the vehicle. The white spirit is also useful if you get any wax oil on, or Tetrasil, or whatever your preferred rust-proofing product is, onto the bodywork. Now you can see on the belly plate here you've got this large heat shield. You've got the DPF/CAT unit sort of almost immediately in the vicinity, and you've also got two large bits of compacted foam, and I just sort of have this feeling they may hold water against that subframe, which you can see I'm just injecting a load of rust-proofing fluid into at the moment. You want to, if possible, if you're going to be doing anything in the wheel arch area, you want to make sure that you've got your brakes and any rubber items covered. You don't really want to get any of this onto the brakes, or indeed onto any rubber gaiters, CV joint boots, etc. You also want to make sure that you've got, as I say, the white spirit on standby, as I did get a bit of this onto one of the auxiliary drive belts, or actually the main serpentine belt. So I used a bit of white spirit and managed to actually get rid of that. It's actually quite a nice view up into the engine bay here. You can actually inject the Tetrasil, or whatever your preferred rust-proofing choice is, up into some of the cavities in the car. One sort of nice benefit of this belly plate is it does keep the whole area under there quite clean. What I'm doing now is I'm actually liberally spraying onto the floor pan. Because the car was already very clean, there was no need to actually clean it off, but if you are doing this to a thoroughly dirty car, get your jet wash, or take the car to a jet wash and give that whole underside a really good clean to get rid of any mud or anything that may be sort of lurking underneath there. As you can see here, I've run out of pressure, but I'm just pumping up the wax oil thing again. I can highly recommend one of these tools. I've had this one now for, oh blimey, the best part of nearly 15 years. So I bought it when I first got the XJ40, and I've been using it ever since for the XJ40 and sort of various vehicles that I've had. Because I intend to keep this particular vehicle, I bought it, bought it literally when it was a year old. I want to try and keep it for as long as possible, and just make sure that it will stay in as good condition as possible. What I'm doing now is I'm just going around with a bit of cloth that was covered in some white spirit, and just taking some of that off of the car itself. What I've also done is I used a bit of satin black paint, and I've got into some of the areas I haven't actually sprayed any wax oil in. So what I will do at some point is actually drop the spare wheel down and actually do the space where the spare wheel resides, and just sort of get all of that sorted out. But for now I just wanted to sort of get the main flat surfaces on the underside done. Eventually, probably next year, take all the wheels off, take the inner guards out, and actually do inside the cavities behind there. But because the car is still fairly young, and I do sort of tend to keep it clean, I can sort of take this job and do it gradually. I don't need to do it in one big hit. Before refitting, I wanted to give the belly plate a bit of a clean, so just to do that, it's not, you know, for any sort of visuals or anything, just used a bit of cloth soaked in some white spirit, liberally gave it a wipe over, let it dry, and then refitted. Refitting is exactly the same as removal, except the reverse, obviously. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, don't forget to hit the like button, and also consider subscribing for more upcoming fascinating hobbies. Thanks for watching.